yet we see them spending way more money during a time when, as everybody has already argued, that incarceration rates aren't going up. It's like the Conservatives have just said, we started raising your justice spending while crime rates were down, and the opposition party was wrong about the crime rates not going up as much. And it's like, isn't it, is that irony? I'm not sure. I'm honestly, it's confusing to me, this whole issue of the Conservatives being able to grasp some idea that they're actually saying they were wrong, but without saying that, and pointing their finger at the opposition by saying that, we spend all this money on building new jails, and we're looking to move into like private jails and stuff. You guys have been saying that crime rates aren't going to rise, and they haven't risen in the last year. And he goes as far as saying that Bill C-30 is affecting repeat offenders only. This is another piece of bullshit that stinks horribly because, again, just as we talked about, we already have all the laws in place to deal with repeat offenders. In other words, they're getting off with saying that their spending and justice spending doesn't need to be questioned because of an increase that they no longer need to use, but no one's going to question
Mike,
all of other money spent.
I got something for you, man.
What do you got?
Just wait a second. You'll hear it. I want to talk to you tonight. I want to talk to you about voting.
Oh,
how important it is to vote. Okay? First, I want to play you a clip of an anarchist that I really respect named Stefan Molyneux, and he's talking about why you shouldn't vote, and he makes a very emotional plea that I'd just like to bounce it off you to see what you think.
Okay, you know let's hear it.
Yeah.
You got us when you were a kid. Mentally. Have you ever seen this scene? Maybe this happened to you. You go to school, you're a kid, a little kid, maybe it's your first day, maybe it's whatever. You're early on. And the older kids grab some candy or some whatever, right? And what they do is they then stand on either side of you and they toss this candy back and forth, and you run, back and forth. Hey, give me my candy back. I want my candy, guys. Well, that's voting. They take from you, and then you take the runaround trying to beg for a little bit of the scraps back. So, what I'm going to try and do in this video is appeal to your base human pride. I mean, God, what a pitiful spectacle to beg your political masters for a few scraps back from the riches they have stolen from you at gunpoint. How pitiful and ridiculous is that? And what a self-shaming, self-abusing action it is to run around in the playground begging for what was rightfully yours to be returned to you in little scraps, whatever we feel will delude you into giving us your sanction and your support. When they take your candy and they're throwing it back and forth in the playground, what do? Well, you can't get the candy back. You can't get your tax money back from the state. You can't get control of your life back from the state because they have the guns. They run the show. They have the guns. Well, you simply don't participate. You say, that candy is not worth my pride. The spectacle of me running around and begging for people to give me back what they have stolen from me when they're never going to do it anyway is too shameful. It is too embarrassing. It is too pitiful for me to engage in that behavior. I'm going to walk away. Keep the fucking candy. Keep my money. I'm not going to beg you to give it back. I'm not going to plead with you. I'm not going to get on my knees. I'm not going to engage in the fantasy that this is at all about me, or about virtue, or about control, or about getting good things done in the world. I am not going to give you that sanction. I am not going to participate in this violent institution. And really, the presidency? I mean, come on, people. You don't have to be brain surgeons. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know emotionally. You don't have to be brain surgeons to understand that changing the president changes nothing about the system. It's like you're trading in an old Lada for a BMW and all you get is the old Lada back with a BMW hood ornament on the top, and they say, hey, we upgraded you. You're changing the hood ornament on the car. It's nothing. It's a ridiculous illusion. What are your choices? Cranky old fascist versus creepy hands-in-your-pocket socialist? These are your choices, and you're going to participate in this? Have some pride, for God's sakes. Walk away.
Well, man, what did you think about that?
Who the fuck does that guy work for?
Yeah. I mean,
You know,
I
he
thought,
may think
wow,
he's
what
working for himself, but maybe he's also saying things that might pander to or help other people's interests.
well, I'll tell you who.
The people he's... Sorry, go ahead.
I'll tell you who it helps when you drop out of the electoral and the democratic process. It helps the person that you would have voted against had you voted, right?
Right.
So if you feel like you don't like any politicians, you still have to try to figure out who's going to be the happiest if you don't vote at all, right?
Yeah.
If you're
What's worse? There's the question that people need to ask themselves. What's worse? Okay, if I don't vote at all and therefore I can feel some sort of internal justice, like I'm not sanctioning the system. What are you sanctioning though by not taking part in the system? Because that also happens. When you decide not to make a choice and a whole bunch of other people decide to make a choice, and if 20,000 people who didn't vote could have changed that and got something that wasn't as horrible, how is that better? I just don't get it. You know where his analogy goes wrong, Tony? He talks about this bully on a playground that's going to steal your candy. And okay, I'll give him this much. I'll say yes, okay. Even before 9/11 and George Bush and all the whole question of police states rising in the world, in North America and all the rest, without a doubt, the state is armed and you're not as armed. That's obvious. Therefore, they can be a bully if they want to be, and you become a victim.
right
The tax
now,
man,
I know
the
where you're going with
policeman.
this, Mike. I know where you're going with this. Let me try to get to it. Okay. So you're saying that who's the they that has the guns? Because in a democracy, that they is controlled by us. Okay. If we organize, if we're smart enough, we can run this society for our purposes. Because it's a democracy, and if we all vote, and 90% of us have one set of interests, and 10% of us have the other interests, guess what?
Exactly.
The
Even
90%
though
wins.
they're-
So why are we letting the 1% control our democracy? It's because half the people don't vote, and then they can outsmart a few here. Split the rest of them over there with several progressive parties. Do you know what I mean?
Think of it like a play. It's like, okay, if you have a play and you have the lead roles, and let's say the lead roles are the politicians, the bankers, the people involved in corporations, they're not going to quit. They're not going to stop voting. They're not going to stop perpetuating the system that's currently involved and decimating our world.
They understand how much there is to lose. That's why
They're gonna, and even if all of the voting public decided to snub their nose at it, they would still pretend that it was a democracy. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
As long as some people are voting, what are you gonna do about low fucking voter turnout? Well, you're not gonna do anything about it.
You love it. You love it.
Low
because-
voter turnout is what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely.
So the bully, okay, this guy decides in his analogy that he's not going to play anymore. Well, guess what? Every day you have candy. and every day the government takes it away, and every day you pretend you're not playing, are you gonna not get a job? Are you not gonna make money? Are you not gonna have a bank account? Are
Exactly.
you not gonna live in a house?
Non-participation is not a good option. You're right. What are you going to go run in the bush and gnaw the bark off of trees or something like that? Is
And
that,
if
is that
you
what your
can
master
do
plan
that
is?
and you can make your life good, good for you. But you know what? People are social animals, Tony. And the reason why
we live in societies, is because that we're more efficient when we work as a group to provide for our basic needs and entertain each other. Like, you know what I mean? I got to admit, if I was living out on a little patch of land out somewhere on the skirts of civilization, right, working 14 hours a day to grow enough food in my farm little plot there.
chances are you're going to have a lot more responsibility.
Yeah, I'm not going to have time to chill with my friends and be entertained. Do you know what I mean? So that's why when we get together as a group,
your responsibility levels are way higher. In fact, you take on more quote unquote roles of decision that are normally held by politicians, because the more remote you are, the more decentralized you are. However, as soon as you have any contact with the system, and you can't avoid it today, this is what he fails to understand too,
Right.
is that we, like...
Yeah, if you don't vote, then the government's still going to govern you. Just
Yeah, they're
because
still
you
gonna
let
be
them
there.
have your candy doesn't mean that they're not going to say thanks. I really appreciate your blind obedience and your completely sheepish ways. Do you know what I mean?
Would he argue the same thing in Germany in 1933? I mean, even if you go beyond voting,
Exactly.
as far as
Yeah,
being
let's say Hitler's
democratic,
running.
what about like all those people that stood up for, as he says, those dirty socialists that had their money in your pocket, and they stood up in Germany and they went, we're not going to let the right wing take over this country, and we're going to fight them in the streets the same way that they approach us.
We
They
don't have
approach
to
us
fight.
with
That's the whole
weapons.
point. We don't have to fight them in the streets. We can fight them in the ballot box.
I'm just saying,
That's the
in
whole
certain
point.
circumstances, his whole argument, in various circumstances, his whole argument just falls apart.
Right.
It's
because
it's a
we
horrible
live in a democracy. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff if you vote. If you get together, maybe if we had some social fabric going on and people talk to each other, and
That's more important as far as he's gonna be an
educated each
anarchist.
other.
Grow
Have a
your
debate with
community.
people. You know what I mean? Find a conservative and have a debate with that person over coffee somewhere. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Instead of talking to an audience who's only going to be quote unquote left leaning or non-government.
I find that in
ideas.
society, we seek out people that we agree with, that we have so much similarities to, and you know what I mean. And then you wind up realizing, wait a second, all the people I know are just like me, and I don't understand why those other people are thinking the way they do, because I stopped hanging out with people like them. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think we have to make friends with conservatives and talk to them, see what they're thinking, see if there's no way to get
and
through to them.
apparently anarchists.
Yeah,
we
really.
need to talk to the anarchists, Tony.
We have to make them understand that they're playing into the hands of the conservatives. And believe me, anarchist, believe me, you
The
are going to
fact-
find a big difference between the Conservative Party and any of the other parties. So I don't care
fact
which
that
party
me
you
or
pick,
you
but pick one. And don't make it a conservative.
Exactly. And the fact that me or you would rub elbows with the idea of anarchist ideology, which is a lot more than throwing bombs. I mean, anybody who's read
Absolutely.
any introduction book on anarchism
Yeah, let's do,
understands instantly that it's a lot more difficult to understand anarchism, and it's a lot more there's many spectrums within the anarchist viewpoint.
Yeah.
But
let's do Anarchy 101. And let me start by saying here, can I try to sum it up in one sentence or two sentences?